Welcome back. So today we're going to take a look at KZ's new ZSTX. And right here I have a little sample of the new KZ family that's kind of new for 2020. And originally we had the KZ Z1, which is the wireless pair featuring the new one driver, which is their fancy new dynamic driver with some modifications to get better airflow in tight spaces. And then we have the CCA CA16, and for those of you who don't know, CCA is actually a sister company of KZ, so I will call it in the family, but it's CCA, not KZ. Then we have the ZSTX, which when it was originally announced, said it was using the same driver. Later marketing sheets were updated, and the actual XUN term was removed, so I don't know if it has the same driver, it doesn't have the same driver. Definitely sounds like the same driver, so I will say, yeah, it probably is, but can't really guarantee that. So let's, for those of you who haven't seen this one up close, this is the ZSTX in green. The shells are actually a translucent green, kind of a throwback to some older KZ styles. They haven't done one of these in quite a while. They sort of moved on to the metal faceplates with the ZSNs and Pros and ZSX. This one's still translucent green, but the cable is actually a new silver cable, and it's actually a little thicker than your original KZ. This is the kind of copper original KZ that comes with most KZ earphones. This is the new silver one. You can see it's actually a little thicker. And it's very much the same, I think, braid and thickness as the pink gold, if you've ever sought that one out on AliExpress. So the marketing sheet says they included this new silver cable as a way to increase detail and resolution in the treble. And that was definitely the right words, and I think it was the right cable for doing that, because that's one of the weaker points that I will point out when we get to it. So first, I just wanted to thank the Yinu Audio Store on Amazon. They sent this one to me, $23.99 on Amazon. Get it, a couple days. It's a little cheaper on AliExpress, but you're not going to get it in 2 days. So thank you to those guys for supporting me with this one. So what do we need to know about the ZSTX? Very first thing, as of I'm recording this, wait for the ZSN Pro X. So, probably 2 weeks after the ZSTX is released, KZ announces the ZSN Pro X. So they're both one dynamic driver, one BA. It's not clear what the difference is. Originally, the ZSN Pro was, I think, $1 or $2 more. Kind of, as of recording this, no one's really gotten their hands on the ZSN Pro to really talk about the difference between the two, but if you've got $20 in your hand, I would say wait, a week or two until some of the Pro reviews come out to see what actually changed between the two, because it's not clear to me. So hang on to your dollars for, another week or two. So the ZST was an old KZ model. It was actually replaced by the ZST Pro. And when we talk about old KZ models, they all had some characteristics which were all kind of similar to among that family. Always, KZ has this fun V shape. People either love it or hate it, but it's a KZ. It's always fun. It's always engaging. It makes popular music sound amazing. So did the ZSTX continue with that one? Yes, it did. So boomy bass. Some people are saying it's a little boomier than others. It's a little more dynamic. It's not always boomy. It definitely can be boomy. If you're buying a KZ, you're sort of expecting it to be a little bit boomy. So did that carry through? Yeah, pretty much. It's kind of boomy. Forward vocals. So another sort of a KZ characteristic is the vocals are usually a little more forward than normal, just to prevent any people from, saying these vocals are recessed and I don't like it. The vocals in the midsection is really nice on the ZSTX, and the vocal placement is kind of dead on. I mean, especially at this price point, the way it sounds, it's definitely really good, and we'll get to that in a bit. So bass bleeding into the mids, another KZ characteristic. I think they usually do it. No different on the ZSTX. It's a full midsection with some help from the bass on the bottom. You end up with that kind of warm, sweet sound, which is kind of a KZ old characteristics. Some people are super annoyed about KZ's 10 kilohertz treble peak. Yes, if you look at the graph, it's actually a little under 10K. Does that affect the treble naturalness? I don't really know the true story. I know people always point to the 10 kilohertz peak as, you know, kind of the Achilles heel of all KZs because it makes cymbals sound horrible. Does this one have some kind of issue there? Sure does. So those are the things that sort of, if you were to describe KZ, all carried through to this new family. So let's talk about some of the newer items on kind of what I found with these new KZ drivers. So first, it's the new, I call it the one dynamic driver. It's possibly in here, possibly not, but it is a kind of a stronger, faster, you know, more intense bass than you're used to. It's definitely not, the old KZ was kind of a slower, more mushier. Those were some of the big complaints on the old bass. This new driver is definitely tighter, faster, much harder hitting than you're going to be expecting at $20. And for me, Ferry Corsten's Punk, if you've ever heard this kind of trance anthem, it's a really hard hitting EDM. It hits exactly where this driver likes to hit. That mid bass, hard beat. Really good, really great pairing to this guy. I mean, most EDM that hits pretty hard, I talked about these kind of with the Diamond as well. When you get these faster, tighter drivers, you get EDM that kind of matches that fast beat and hard hitting mid bass. And yeah, that's exactly what this guy is. But Juice WRLD's come and go. You know, rest in peace to him. I think he had a lot to offer the world, and his life was unfortunately cut short. But please listen to his album. And this song, Come and Go, it's a really catchy, another kind of hard-hitting song. But between his voice and the mids, this hard-hitting dynamic driver, really nice. I think the sub bass is probably toned down from a bit from the KZ of the old, where those were probably a little bit more sub-focused. This is definitely more mid-focused. So you'll notice the sub bass, it kind of complements the mid bass. You'll hear, you know, kind of a hard hit, and then you'll actually get kind of the rumble down below. But it's definitely not sub bass focused, and there's some rumble. It's not a huge rumbler. When asked to rumble, it will definitely rumble. But don't expect it to be kind of huge in the sub bass. It's definitely more like the Z1. When I talked about the Z1, it's exactly the same thing. It's a very hard-hitting, fast, tight mid bass, and not so much a, you know, big rumbler, super bass dynamic driver. So be aware of that. So the mids, I will call them forward, warm, sweet with an edge. It's kind of this Z1 edge. When I talked about the Z1, the tuning isn't exactly old style, very warm, kind of a heavy, honey. It's not like that. The Z1 had a real intensity to its sound. And I think the Z1 has kind of a very loud, you pop these in and they're just very loud. So when you get down to the ZSTXs, where you can actually control the volume a little better, the mids have a much more kind of a warmer sound when the volume isn't as high. And so I think between the bass bleed, kind of a full, rich midsection, it's a really nice vocal placement is right where it should be. I think everything just comes together in the mids. And for $20, it's kind of a killer pair to just throw in your bag and go because of how good that midsection and vocals are really going to be. So one of these new songs, Taylor Swift and Bon Iver's Exile. So that one starts off with his voice, which is kind of that low, deep, rich voice. And again, you've got this really nice dynamic driver. It's giving you a lot of richness, a lot of deepness through his voice, and it sounds great. Then you hear the piano, and you're going to think for a second, the piano is maybe a little dark, maybe it's a little heavy. Again, this dynamic driver, a little boomy, a little dark-ish. So then Taylor Swift starts singing, and she's singing in that lower range, and again, you get this really nice, smooth, sweet vocal in her voice, with this piano playing, which is a little heavier. And as the song goes on, they both kind of raise their voices a bit. And by the time you get to her upper range voice and this piano, which you thought was kind of low and dark, she hits this higher end, this kind of lower end on the piano, and everything, all of your, V-shaped dreams kind of come together in that moment, because her voice is just cutting through at this higher end, the higher end of the V with this lower end on the piano, his voice. It all just comes together just as it should, just as you expect it, and it sounds great because of the soundstage, which we'll talk about later. But, one of those new songs where it just kind of, it's not really my thing, but to hear all that come together in that midsection on something that was $20 kind of blows me away. It's really good, really well done midsection. So Treble. Treble is treble, usually for KZ, and ZSTX, I'm going to say it's no different. It's definitely got some wackiness to it. The extension is all there. The resolution, not all there. If you're really looking for details in the treble, it's just not there. And a lot of people go back and blame 10K. They'll blame the BA that's used. I don't actually know what the real problem is, but if that's your main focus, if 10K bothers you, KZ in general is probably not going to work for you. But be aware that if you're listening to a cymbal, it might sound kind of strange. I will call out Danzig's Mother, because it starts off with cymbals. He hits through the beginning of the song, he hits through the whole drum kit, and if you could make it past the brasses, then you're actually doing pretty good, because the rest of the song, again, with his voice a little forward, the rest of the drums with this powerful dynamic driver, the guitar, everything actually sounds amazing, assuming you get past the cymbals in the beginning. So, I think, the treble really is something old. I don't think that is new in any way, shape, or form. It kind of sounds a lot like things that they've done in the past. So the last kind of important difference that I kind of pointed out with the Z1 and the CA16, they all had these kind of amazing sound stages that were very different than what KZ had done in the past. And the ZSTX is sort of no different. And I'll kind of so the song Little Sadie by Crooked Still. Soundstage, not as high as the CA16. It's definitely much wider. And this song, it kind of starts off, it reserves sort of the very edges beyond your ears for some strings later. But I think it starts off with the banjo. So take your ear, go a little beyond, and then come in a little bit towards the middle of your head. And there's the banjo. Kind of dead center is her, again, smooth, sweet voice right in the middle. And then right next to her is the violin. And then again, it sort of reserves the edge for the strings later. But, this positioning is very detailed. It's kind of scary, how localized that sound is and how definitive it is. It's not like, that violin sounds, between her and the edge. It's very, very specific locations. And Sympathy for the Devil is another one where if you listen to it past like the first 30 seconds or so, when that piano kicks in, the piano is always located between the vocal, which is right in the middle, and I think it's the drums that are on the right edge. And the piano has a very specific position. And again, at $20, it's just kind of dead on, very distinct, localized sound in the soundstage, which actually goes pretty well beyond your ears. It's just not necessarily deep, and it's not necessarily as high as something like the Z1 or the CA16, but you know, again, we're talking about a 1BA, 1DD in a $20 range. It's really good, and I really love the way that worked with the mids. This, you know, vocal that's a little forward in the soundstage. There's plenty of room around the vocals for instruments, and when it goes beyond your ears, there's even more room. So it all just comes together into a super nice package, and yeah, kind of really pleased with the ZSTX. But as I said, I'm sort of holding out for the ZSN Pro. You know, if they fix a little bit of the treble problem, give you a little bit more resolution, then I would probably pay, you know, $2 more for the ZSN Pro. I just don't know at this point in time. So we're kind of waiting that one out. But for now, it's the ZSTX, and I will talk to you next time.